on the show. Unusual. I was a little worried about switching locations with the show because we've had it so buttoned up off site in the PioStream Mobile Studio. But that said, excited that you can be with us so we can bring in our guest, a junior for Lewis and Clark Volleyball and recently named the Northwest Conference Student Athlete Advisory Committee President. Let's bring in Izzy Artiaga to the show. Izzy, it's so good to have you join us and talk a little bit about what's going on with SAC. And like I said, I know you got to get to class, so I'm very thankful that you took some time for us. Let's start with Northwest Conference kind of breaking news in a way, named as the SAC president. How excited are you to lead that group?
I was honestly really surprised that I was named president. This was something that I've been working towards since the moment that I committed to Lewis and Clark my senior year of high school. In terms of kind of where we're going, our goal for the next year is really to kind of focus on nutrition in student athletes as well as mental health, especially as a result of the pandemic. I know a lot of students have been feeling kind of a little bit underwhelmed. Their mental health is maybe not as great as it once was, so that's definitely something that we kind of want to be proactive about and making sure that we break the stigma in terms of being able to talk about it.
You have this opportunity to be able to open up that line of communication. And I was talking to you before the show. I mean, this show has been so great for me to have an opportunity to connect with more student athletes. So I'm trying to find the best possible outcomes of a situation that otherwise we prefer not to have had with the pandemic. And you mentioned this is something that you were excited about the opportunity to do since you got to Lewis and Clark. So that gives me a good opportunity to ask you that question about why you chose Lewis and Clark. What was it about a chance to compete for the Pios that really drew you to Portland?
Well, first of all, I really liked the school in general. I visited my sophomore year of high school, and it was kind of one of the first schools that I ever looked at. And after that, every other college that I visited, I always found myself comparing it to Lewis and Clark, and it just had that kind of home feel as soon as I stepped onto the campus. I loved the team when I met with them. I really liked the culture that they were trying to build, and I just knew that I wanted to be a part of that.
For this campus, and you would choose rhetoric and media studies as your major. And I always kind of like that major because I'm someone who works in the world of video and works in the world of multimedia, and so I'm always inspired by those who kind of choose that path at Lewis and Clark, but also choose a minor in entrepreneurship, which is a little bit of a newer path for Lewis and Clark students. What was it that led you down both of those areas?
Well, I came into Lewis and Clark with a different major in mind, tried it out, figured it really wasn't the one for me. Kind of took the intro class to rhetoric and media studies on a suggestion from multiple people, and I just really fell in love with how diverse it is. You can focus more on the rhetoric side of things, you can focus more on the media side of things, but in this major, you really have to work in both of them. And I just really liked that there were so many different options after I graduate that I could use my major with. For my minor, kind of the same thing. I think it was like kind of the closest thing to a business degree in some sense that I would be able to use all of the skills that I've learned from the classes that I've taken so far in the minor and be able to apply them pretty immediately to any sort of job that I want to go into after graduation.
You're watching LCPioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we talk to Izzy Artiaga, who is joining us. And we've talked a lot about Student Athlete Advisory Committee on the conference level. I want to dive a little more deeply into the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, specifically at Lewis and Clark, because you are the co-chair of that as well. As you've been involved with SAC, what are some of the things that you've enjoyed about your experience so far, but what are some of the emphasis too in terms of ways that more people who are student athletes at Lewis and Clark can get involved?
I would say I've really enjoyed the connections that I've made with my advisors, such as this year it's Shauna Felt, who is the softball coach, as well as Coach Ange, who is our strength and conditioning coach. Both of them have been huge supporters, and they've really helped me kind of navigate my first year as chair. And I definitely wouldn't be able to do SAC without them. In terms of athletes kind of getting more involved. We are putting on a lot of events in this next week, especially with the mini break coming up. We're doing our annual Pio Pong tournament. That's in the past been a huge, huge success. So I'm really, really excited to kind of see everyone come back out into the gym and really tap into how competitive we all are.
Yeah, and we are excited to see as we get toward the end of the spring semester what this year can look like too, because there's been a lot of changes to the way that things are going in Multnomah County. We're still going to continue to be cautious, work together, the we before me at LC mantra and all of that. But hopefully we can continue to have some success, including on the floor. Your volleyball team so far undefeated on the year. You haven't had to postpone, cancel any matches yet. So things are going well in that realm, and we hope that that continues. Describe the situation where last season, November 2019, you end with these big wins over Whitman and Whitworth, the eventual Northwest Conference champion, the latter. And then you have to wait so long to kind of capitalize on the momentum. Now you've won 5 games in a row leading back to that time. How difficult was that to have such a positive note to last season, but then wait so long to try to capitalize on it?
I mean, I think, and I probably speak for the entire team as well as our coaches, we just realized how incredibly grateful we were, and that we are not going to take any practice, any lift, any time of team bonding for granted after that. You know, nothing is guaranteed right now. We don't have any matches this week. However, we do play Pacific doubleheader next week, and we're just doing everything we can this week in practice to make sure that we be the better team.
Well, you've been great so far, and we're excited to see what can happen for the rest of the year. I would love to have you come back at another time, because you've done 2 favors for me. One, short notice to join me today, and then secondly, first show from a different place. We'd love to keep in touch with SAC, try to make sure that we pass along the great work that you and your group are doing with that on lcpioneers.com live. And then, of course, also when you're not up against a class break too, that would be great. Izzy Artiaga, thank you so much for taking time to join us today on lcpioneers.com live.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's Izzy Artiaga. And again, trying to change the venue, trying to get things going, have some work to do on the backdrop and the camera, and then the microphone dies right off the bat, and the batteries that I thought I had set up weren't there either. And that's always a frustrating experience because I haven't had to deal with that yet. But the good news is, as far as I can tell on Facebook Live, Izzy was coming through loud and clear, and that's the thing that I want to focus on the most, is having a chance to talk to the guests. So let's step aside. I have some headlines to share with you, some great things that happened over the last weekend of competition. I'll try to get the microphone up and running, and we will talk a little bit more about some things coming up on lcpioneers.com live. Stay tuned. It's coming up next in just a moment. Thanks for being with us.